Institutionalized time. How prison rewires your relationship with time, choice, and freedom. Freedom isn't always difficult because of the bars that once surrounded you. Sometimes it's difficult because of the invisible routines that still live inside of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Why Is That So podcast. I am DeCourcy Dumas, founder of Regulated Under Pressure and author of From Conviction to Clarity. Today, I want to talk to you about something that nobody warned me about 30 years ago. People ask me all the time, what was prison like? Most people expect stories about violence, about gangs, about fights, about sexual assault, about survival. And yes, those things existed. No doubt about it. But there was something else happening that was far more powerful. Prison wasn't just changing where I lived, ate, and slept. It was changing how my brain understood time itself. For 10 years, I didn't own my schedule. I didn't own my choices. I didn't own my freedom. Eventually, I didn't even realize what had happened. I had become synchronized to an institution. Not because someone forced me to be so every day, but because my nervous system adapted. So today we're going to talk about institutionalized time, why freedom can actually feel overwhelming, and why our nervous system doesn't instantly recognize that you're finally safe. We're going to start with a topic that I'm going to coin the phrase of the invisible clock. One thing most people never think about is prison doesn't simply control your movement. It controls your relationship with time. Every day looked almost identical. Wake up, count time, breakfast, movement, work assignment, count, lunch, movement, count, dinner, count, lockdown. Lights out. Buzzer sounding. Words over the intercom. Doors opening, doors closing. Gates slamming. Someone calling names over loudspeakers. Someone calling names from across the dorm. You don't check your watch. The institution becomes your watch. And eventually, your internal clock, it just disappears. Your nervous system no longer asks, what do I want to do? Instead, it asks, what am I allowed to do? That distinction is massive because over time, permission replaces autonomy. And the scary part, it begins to feel normal. I can remember my first night home, sleeping inside of a home again. And most people would think, man, that must have been the best sleep of your life. Actually, it wasn't. It was one of the strangest nights I'd ever experienced. The room felt too quiet. There was no noise from a television. There were no external conversations going on. There were no steel doors closing. There were no officers yelling. There was no sound of keys. No constant footsteps. No buzzers. No counts. Nothing. Just me and silence. For 10 years, My nervous system had learned to sleep inside of noise, and now silence felt unfamiliar, even comfortable. My body wasn't looking for peace, it was looking for what had become predictable. And that's something neuroscience teaches us. The nervous system doesn't always choose what's healthy, it chooses what's familiar. That's why people stay in unhealthy relationships. That's why trauma repeats itself. That's why change feels uncomfortable. Your brain predicts safety through familiarity, even when familiarity is unhealthy. Now, let me give you something, the same thing that was given to me. It's a backpack, and we're going to call this the backpack of freedom. One of the biggest surprises after prison wasn't getting freedom, it was having to manage freedom. After my release, I went to a transitional center for 6 months. Everything still required someone's approval. Approval to go to work. I had to submit my exact travel plan. Was I going to catch the bus? Was I going to catch a cab? Which route I was going to take? What time? If someone was going to pick me up or take me, it had to be approved. They had to know their name. They had to know the make and model of the vehicle. Had to know the license plate. Everything. For 6 months, I followed that exact structure or that exact routine. And then one day, I was released. Nobody needed a schedule anymore. Nobody asked where I was walking. Nobody asked how I was going to get back. Nobody needed to approve anything. And that sounds freeing, right? But here's what surprised me. It felt overwhelming. I often describe it like this. Prison had put a heavy backpack on me. When I walked out, I expected someone to remove it. But instead, they handed me an even bigger one. Only this backpack was filled with choices. What route should I take? Should I get a ride? Should I walk? Should I take the bus? Should I take the train? Should I leave now or should I leave later? Go somewhere else first or just wait a minute? Nobody tells you. Nobody tells you that after years of having every decision made for you, choice itself becomes exhausting. And this takes me to what I call the science of decision fatigue. And here's where neuroscience becomes fascinating, at least to me. Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive function, planning, judgment, decision making, problem solving. Inside prison, many of those daily decisions disappear. The institution decides. The institution structures. The institution organizes. And then one day, you're expected to instantly operate like someone who has been making independent decisions every day for years. And that's not how the brain works. Your nervous system adapts to whatever environment it repeatedly experiences. Adaptation is survival. And survival doesn't disappear overnight. So just know when the body leaves, but the nervous system doesn't. Even years after prison, I noticed something. Whenever something unexpected happened, my body reacted before my mind. My heart rate, it increased. My breathing changed. My muscles tightened. My eyes immediately scanned the room. This is hypervigilance. Safety first, always. My body had become incredibly efficient at protecting me. The problem was, it didn't realize the danger had changed. People often think healing happens when circumstances change, but not necessarily. Sometimes circumstances change immediately, but the nervous system needs years to catch up. My body was free. My nervous system was still living according to old predictions. And here's what institutionalized really means. Growing up, I used to hear people say, man, he's institutionalized. And as a kid, I thought they meant someone living in like a psychiatric institution. I had no idea. Years later, I realized institutionalization isn't simply where you've lived. It's what your nervous system has adapted to. It's a physiological state, a predictive state. Your brain builds models based upon repeated experiences because it's an archive of the past. It's a record of the past. So repeat something long enough, and eventually your nervous system assumes this is how life works. Whether that's prison, childhood trauma, abuse, combat, war, or chronic stress, the nervous system learns. Not because it's broken, because it's brilliant. And this is bigger than prison. Maybe you've never spent one day incarcerated, but perhaps you've lived years inside of anxiety, inside survival, inside poverty, inside grief, inside of abuse, inside an unhealthy relationship, inside constant chaos. And if that's true, your nervous system has also learned institutionalized time. Maybe not through prison walls, but through repeated stress. Maybe every morning your body wakes up expecting another difficult day. Maybe your brain predicts rejection before connection. Maybe your nervous system mistakes peace for danger because peace feels unfamiliar. This conversation isn't just about incarceration. It's about adaptation. Every nervous system is being trained by something. The question is, what is yours rehearsing every day? One of the greatest lessons prisons taught me didn't appear and didn't happen while I was incarcerated. It happened after I came home. I realized healing wasn't about forgetting my past. Healing was teaching my nervous system that today isn't yesterday. That I no longer needed permission to live. That silence could become peaceful. That freedom didn't have to feel heavy. And that my body could eventually learn what safety actually feels like. And if you're listening today and you recognize pieces of yourself in this story, I want you to remember something. You know your nervous system are not fighting against you. It's fighting for you. Using outdated information, the body remembers. But here's the beautiful part. The same neuroplasticity that allowed your brain to adapt to trauma allows it to adapt to healing. What was trained can be retrained. What was conditioned can be reconditioned. And what once kept you alive doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Why Is That So? Until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and remember, where intention goes, energy flows. High vibrations, and namaste.